Okay, it's 2:00. We will call the Water Management Committee to order. First, we'll, any committee public comments?
I'll look at all the public online today.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item 3, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority.
You haven't seen the agenda yet, have you?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
There is a meeting coming up on May 10th.
Yeah.
And then also there's a Public Advisory Committee meeting tonight.
You had a policy advisory committee at 5
Or
o'clock.
policy, yes, correct.
And that's the one that we're going to discuss shallow well mitigation. And I understand that what they're asking is that come to an understanding or some policy what to do with wells that are out there that the people have no recollection or records of anything about the well. I mean, I'm interested to hear that conversation because I would think anybody who has a well would keep information, at least know the basics.
It would be very interesting. I requested at the last 2 meetings that we form an ad hoc committee to discuss that. The general manager actually brought up at the end of the last meeting 2 items. One was a request by me to move the board comments to the end.
Right.
And then also she wanted to know about forming an ad hoc committee because I've brought it up twice. They answered the question about moving the meeting, the discussion
no.
up. That was no, but
Yeah.
they never discussed the ad hoc, whether
Okay.
they wanted to have one or not. So
A recommendation is that back, even right when the GA was forming, and it might have been during the meeting we used to have here for the consortium, what was it, all the people, pre-GA, the meeting that was here with all the water.
Group?
That's it, yeah. Josh Nugent mentioned to me that he had developed, along with a group over there, some kind of checklist for people who had well problems and might be a mitigation issue. And it was a checklist about, do you have this, can you produce this? It was a whole list of questions and things, which might be worth maybe someone talking to him and see if you can get our hands on that.
Well, just think, I believe there are 3 members of the Policy Advisory Committee that have their own wells. So it'd be interesting to hear
Yes,
from them what they do in terms of record keeping, just to get an understanding. I don't know if they're typical well owners or not, but I'd be interested to hear their thoughts about what records they keep and what they think should be kept.
because I remember having a lengthy discussion with Josh because they were doing that in the another basin. And I said, what do you do? I mean, you just hand the guy some money or, how do you do it? And he says they developed a very comprehensive thing. It's not really long, but it really tells them how old is the well, how deep was it drilled, has it been cleaned, have you had any problems with it in the past? And they complete this whole form and that's used to evaluate it. So, next time I see him, I'll ask him if he can shoot it over to you or to the policy committee. That would be, who chairs that now? Is that still Dave
I think it's
Janik?
Dave Janik.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
That's all I got.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep asking until they tell me no or yes about
They
an
don't
ad hoc
like
committee,
ad
because they
hoc.
never really answered.
They don't
so-
like any kind of committees, I can tell you that.
So we'll see where that goes. Okay, do we have any public comment on the Groundwater Authority item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to LADWP aqueduct release.
Okay, well, releases continue from 4 of the 5 sites within the Indian Wells Valley. The Boulder Canyon draw, that one's been shut off as of April 17th. And as of yesterday, we estimate 2,763 acre feet have been released. Interesting thing is, observation this morning from the guys that are going out and checking, at one point, they pinned the lead of the releases onto the Watkins property and actually onto the east side of the highway. As of this morning, the water's receded almost a mile south of Bowman Road. So, seems kind of strange. I mean, I know we've had warmer weather, so there's probably some evaporation, but their observation is that during the day when it's warm and there's wind, the water recedes, and then at night when it cools down and the sun sets, it creeps a little bit more.
I have a hard time believing that evaporation would occur that quickly. And we've
I know,
seen puddles lay in the desert for months at a time, and it take forever to evaporate.
You would think initially, because the wash has been dry for so long, that when that water started flowing, it would percolate down, and at some point, once it gets saturated, it would slow down unless there's a lot of head pressure pushing it down, and it's relatively shallow, so I can't see that. But I was talking to Chuck Krieger yesterday. He said he remembered reading a study somewhere where water percolating into the ground. If there's a shallow aquifer, once it contacts that aquifer, it accelerates the percolation,
Oh, okay.
which maybe that's what's
Maybe
happening.
that's what's happening. That'd be good news.
Jose was telling me just a little while ago that when they were out there, I think they're walking down towards the sage release, they kicked some dirt, and I think he said there was still, the soil was still moist about that far below the surface from the rains. So maybe that's a factor. I don't know, but it just seems strange to me that it's receded almost a mile.
Now,
That's
you were
interesting.
working with Stetson. Are they going to try to do some well monitoring in various areas to
Yeah.
see if something happens? And which really isn't worth doing until things really cut back, I assume. But that'll be interesting to know what happens if we see any kind of aquifer change.
So going back to, we're investigating possible projects. We initially approached the BLM about doing a project, and they were initially supportive and expressed the understanding of why it needed to be done. But of course, they have requirements of archaeological survey, biological survey, and the time frame to get those done would make those projects not practical. They suggested that a project could be expedited if we did something on state lands. So that's what we looked at, and they actually suggested some parcels along the wash that, come to find out, belong to Caltrans. And of course, Caltrans purchased those parcels for mitigation for desert tortoise and Mojave ground squirrel. So Fish and Wildlife told us you can't do anything on those properties, no construction activities whatsoever. So what we've been looking at, and we've been in contact with the Groundwater Authority, Stetson's staff, and talking about these projects. The first project we're looking at, which could be done quickest and probably the easiest, is putting sandbags, building dams on all of our properties. And I just got the notice of exemption that's been, Dave Scriven put together and Jim reviewed, where they identified, based on the surveys they did, the best locations to put these dams. So we're getting ready to, we'll get approval from the board and submit a notice of exemption to do that. Still looking at a project involving catch basins, primarily on the Watkins property because it's disturbed. We've changed the design at least twice in the number of basins, but the thought was to use a scraper, go in there and take out like 5 feet deep and then connect into the wash and let those fill up, and they just always stay full. They don't overflow. That's the second project. We have been talking with the county about potential resources. I talked to Supervisor Peters when he was here for the groundbreaking of the new Richmond School, and I just asked him if it would be possible, because I know the landfill has at least one scraper, I don't know how many they have, to possibly have them assist us with excavating those basins. We haven't got a commitment yet, but you know, we're still looking at a lot of things with regards to being able to slow down that flow and capture more of it.
You're looking at just scraping up like this around it to create a basin, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just-
It probably wouldn't take long if they'd.
And I have 2 scrapers, but I don't know if they would let me do it as a donation or if it'd be a conflict of interest.
It probably would be.
It probably would be, but I would be willing to help.
Even if you just did it for the fuel, huh? Yeah,
So,
yeah, that is an issue, and Jim would probably have to make that call.
yeah. So, okay, well, hopefully we can do something.
You can let Sharon drive one.
There you go.
When just in contact with Fish and Wildlife, as long as we stay within the wash itself and the flow does not overflow the banks, an incidental take permit is not required. However, a stream alteration agreement is required. In a conversation I had with Dave Scriven, if Dave relayed in an email, they had said that short of an emergency, which according to their definition, emergency is imminent threat to property and life, they would process any agreement standard processing, which I don't know what that means, but obviously it's not expedited. So we had a call with Paul Goslin this morning from DWR because we're looking for some help with conveying that this is an emergency, that the LADWP declared an emergency. They're concerned about flooding. I've reached out to the Navy. I've talked to Commander Turner on the base, the head of Public Works. They are concerned about flooding on the base, damaging facilities, the snort track. And I just requested, not even a formal letter, I said, could we just get 2 or 3 sentences on an email just indicating your concern for your facilities, your property, and support for the water district projects to try and slow down the flow and capture more of it for recharge. I haven't heard anything. I reached out again earlier the week to just see if we could get something from them. Still haven't heard anything. But Paul Gosselin indicated that they were going to follow up with Fish and Wildlife and convey to them that there are emergencies and there's concern in Nathaniel County with flooding, Big Pine, Independence. And so hopefully when we do submit our stream alteration agreement, it can be approved relatively quickly. And Paul seemed to indicate that could happen. So that's what we're working on right now.
Did you say Paul was with DWR or LADWP?
DWR.
Oh, DWR. Okay, I'm sorry, DWR, yeah.
Yeah.
Department of Water Resources.
He's a deputy director just below Carla Nemeth.
Okay.
We're continuing to get updates daily from LADWP, which we appreciate. And that's very helpful.
All right.
And communicating with Stutz, I'm sending Steve Johnson and his staff the snapshots that we get from water supply people.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Okay, any public comments? Okay, see none. All right, item 5, potential impact of recycled water.
Well, as I said last month, this was on the agenda. It was item A2 on the January 24th board workshop agenda. Related to discussing how the water district could potentially benefit with a credit, toward the requirement to get imported water by getting the city's recycled water. We haven't had any meetings with them in the last month, nor have we had any discussion with them on that particular topic. So I really don't have anything to report on that.
Well, was that the discussion way back that if we sign an agreement, then we can get credit for that water?
It's related to
Sort of
that.
same thing?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, we have to watch it pretty close.
So we'll just leave it on the agenda then as a
Yeah, I mean,
placeholder. And
I'd still like to see that go forward. I'm curious as to what is in the mind of, and maybe Krieger and Stewart can answer that. Maybe you can, Chuck. What's in the mind of the city? Are they going to take the wastewater and then tertiary treat it and then try to get someone to take it to do something with it? Or are they just going to come off just like they do now in the plant and hope someone takes it at that point and tertiary treats it and then either inject it or treat it fully? So I don't know where their intentions lie, or do we not know? To see how far is their project going to go? Is it
As far as the treatment,
Yeah, is it going to go through? Is it going to treat it to tertiary?
I believe they're looking at tertiary, yeah.
Okay, and so now they have to figure out what's going to happen with the tertiary water, and but that's where they're treating. Okay, that's good to know at least, because that's a big one phase of it to get it to that point. All right.
okay, move to item 6, brackish water supply.
Brackish water, there's very little to report since the March committee meeting. The draft status report covering the fourth quarter of 2022 as well as the 2022 annual report are still in the works. I did touch base with Wade earlier in the week. He indicated he intended to try and complete both this week and submit the drafts to DWR for review and comment. And then the final steps before completing the study and submitting the feasibility report. That includes evaluating shallow well impacts in the study area based on existing predicted drawdowns using the DRI model. And the project completion date is still December 30th, 2023. So we have plenty of time to wrap that up.
Any comments? Okay. All right, item 7, alternate water sources.
Okay, John Jansen with Collier Geophysical continues to work on the final draft of his report on the interpretation of the 104 miles of the seismic data that he reprocessed. He completed the net clay calculations for all the hydrogeologic zones and shared the results with Tim Parker for his review. Tim's completed his review, so John can now finalize his report. So that's what he's working on.
Okay.
And then at the January 24th board workshop, staff was tasked with drafting a plan for exploring the potential of the El Paso subbasin to provide a water supply that's not currently being utilized. Krieger and Stewart previously issued a technical report with tasks and preliminary costs back in 2021, which was presented to the board. The current work will expand on this Tim Parker has reviewed the aerial electromagnetic data from the SkyTem project, as well as looked at geological logs in the area, and he has identified a couple of sites to consider for drilling exploration wells. What we found, Tim has found that the forms to apply for the technical support services from the Department of Water Resources are no longer available online. You have to get them directly from the DWR regional offices. So last month, Tim contacted both the regional office by phone and email, and also the state office by email. Jack Tung, who heads the regional office, expressed reservations about receiving an application from other than a groundwater sustainability agency. So when Tim last checked in, Jack was still waiting to hear back from the Technical Support Services Program, and Tim was waiting as well. But this morning, as I said, Tim, Dave Scriven, and I had a call with Paul Goslin and Tim Godwin, both with DWR. They both acknowledged that there's benefits to looking at that area because there isn't a lack of information. But they wanted to make sure that the Groundwater Authority was in support of the project and also the support of the district submitting the application. So with regard to the LEWP releases, we've not only talked about doing projects to take advantage of the current release, but also something more long-term planning, because this is probably going to happen again. So we want to look at projects for recharge. So when we have our discussion next with the GA, particularly with Stetson, we're gonna bring this up about the El Paso area, looking at for potential recharge areas and you know, get them on board with doing some work through DWR's technical support services.
Okay. Any comments?
I always worried when we talk about projects that we're involved with like you say, recharge and exploration, is getting the GA to buy in on it. Usually I think Stetson will, and just worry about, it just bothers me that we have such a hard time, anything the water district wants to do gets stonewalled, so we have to be very careful how you proceed with that. Get all your ducks lined up and make sure everything's ready, and Stetson working on the whole bit, and then just go from there. I just hate to spring something out there and all of a sudden it just gets shut down right away because we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on that, 100%. So. Okay, any future agenda items? Okay, we will adjourn at 2:17.